Here we are, another episode of the Kinvestor Report, where I chat with industry experts to discuss the market, economy, stocks, and all things mining. I'm your host, Arlen Hansen. Today, I'm joined once again by legendary Rick Rule, who joined me last year to discuss everything junior mining, gold, silver, and some of the complexities of the uranium market. And here we are to check back in on the U sector specifically today. Lots to talk about. Well, he doesn't need an introduction, of course. Rick has over 40 years in the industry, highly experienced investor, a billionaire, a sought-after speaker, the founder of Battle Bank, and host of the Natural Resource Investment Symposium, which we will talk about more about later in the show. This interview is not investment advice. I'm not an investment advisor or professional geologist or engineer. However, I have been investing myself and kicking rocks for 24 years now. If Ken or myself has any financial interest in any companies mentioned in today's interview, it will be disclosed upfront right away. Please do your own due diligence. Rick, thanks so much for joining me again on the show today. How you doing?
Arlen, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me back. I enjoy the process.
Yeah, right on. Well, before we dive into it, I saw one of your presentations at the MIF in January this year and said we should all be millionaires after this bull market's over. That was a 5 or 10 minute presentation. And if you could just maybe throw that out there to people that are listening, why we should be millionaires after this bull market's over.
Well, I need to disclaim that the audience was in Vancouver, and
Yes.
I told people that if they were in Vancouver, with access to the information that they had in Vancouver, that if they were willing to do the work, that there was no excuse for them not to be a billionaire. If you walk into a coffee shop on House Street, it is not unlikely that you'll run into Ross Beatty. If you run into Ross Beatty, you should walk up to him, you should buy him a cup of coffee, and you should ask him for insights. I'm not
Yeah.
saying just Ross Beatty. All I'm trying to say is that Vancouver is still the epicenter for natural resource finance. The very, very, very small cap side of the natural resource business is still in the doldrums, despite the fact that commodity prices are up and despite the fact that leadership is moving from the commodities to the larger equities, which means that you have a year and a half, 2 years, probably at the most, to build your position in the micro caps before they go crazy. If you aren't willing to do the work, if you aren't willing to go to offices and visit with the PR people, if you aren't willing to buy Ross Beatty a cup of coffee at Tim Hortons, if you aren't willing to read the insider filing statements, the resource statements, the quarterlies, the annuals, you won't make any money. But there were probably 500 people who skipped their day-to-day life and went to the Metal Investors Conference. For those people, if they're willing to do the work, it is scary how much money is going to be available to be made. I watched that process myself in the 1970s, going to the University of British Columbia as a very young adult. I made $1 million in that market.
Yep.
I watched that process again in the early part of the decade of the 90s, which was a tremendous bull market that people have
Sure
forgotten about.
was. Yeah.
The so-called penny dreadfuls were uniformly up 10 or 20 fold in the period 1988 to 1996. I watched that process again happen in the middle part of the decade, 2000 to 2010, and I'm seeing the same circumstance unfolding today.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. So would you say this is like your third time you're staring this at in the face and going, "Hey,
Fourth,
fourth
fourth,
time. Okay, okay."
fourth.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I correct myself. You said billionaire, not millionaire. So there's a lesson from Rick. And yeah, what does a Tim Hortons coffee cost? I know inflation's gone up. I know the government's charging us more and charging us for our coffee cups now in Vancouver. But yeah, for all 2.25, you might be able to find a Ross Beatty or a Paul Matisse or a Frank Justra or you name it. They're
Sure.
downtown now, yeah, and they've got a lot of
So,
insights, and they're all very kind people, like I find, right? So
Arlen, a lot of people, when I say that, say, well, Rick, you have access to these guys. The really, really, really successful guys don't want to talk about Canucks hockey. They couldn't care less
Oh.
about Trump. They want to talk about their companies. And the challenge isn't to get them to talk to you. The challenge is to get them to shut up. Um, if they won't talk to you, they're saying something very important. They're saying they don't care about their cost of capital. And you
Yeah.
should ignore them and you should ignore their stocks.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That's awesome insight. I love that. So I kind of wanted, there's a couple things I want to touch base on, and kind of what's making a bunch of noise right now, or a little bit of news recently, is not, besides gold, is uranium. It kind of feels like it's went from like the greatest to the hatest in all but like 8 months. The charts have turned here in the last couple of weeks. I think like 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was a week where not a single pound of uranium was transactions through the whole supply chain. It was crazy, right? Whether it was because of the tariffs or who knows what. To me, that kind of marked a little bit of a fear bottom. And then I started buying some positions in the market. But where do you think we're at with the space in uranium right now?
I'm afraid that your question is probably a short-term question, and so the answer to that is I don't know.
Okay.
I noticed that the extreme hate that uranium enjoyed 3 months ago appears
Hmm.
to be gone.
Yes.
It was hilarious monitoring things like X, where
Yeah.
various posters had uranium as a component on their X handle and capitulated publicly, saying, I hate the stuff.
Yeah, we're out. I'm out.
Yeah, there's nothing I love. There's nothing I love more than hate.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
the other thing is that a lot of people are paying attention to a factoid. Now, a factoid is important in the near term while people pay attention to it, but people slavishly follow the spot market.
Yeah.
And the spot market is so illiquid, many days it has lower dollar volume than the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust. Arguably, the Sprott market is more important than the spot market,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
particularly because the action as it impacts companies isn't happening on the spot market, it's happening on the term market. The term market is extremely opaque, so people can't see it. But the structure of the uranium business gets stronger and stronger and stronger. The beauty of the term market, which is lost on most investors because they don't want to do the work, is that in uranium, unlike any other commodity in the world, the producer and the consumer can enter into a product that determines price and volume for 10 years or 15 years. What that means is that if you're a very small uranium company, you can obtain production finance much more easily because, in effect, you borrow the balance sheet of an investment grade utility that's guaranteeing your revenue. And there's not one in 1,000 retail investors that's paying attention to this because they don't want to do the work to reconcile the income statement, pounds sold versus cash receipts, to get some visibility as to the contracts. Uh, for me, this has been an absolute gift.
Yeah.
In the last 6 months, I've been able to operate on the investment side of the business against almost no competition
That's a good
because
place to
people
be.
just didn't want to do the work.
Yeah, that's a
So
good place to be, right?
I kind of kept my yapper shut in interviews, except on occasion to saying, I love hate. I love the structure of the interplay between the balance sheet and the income statement, and I personally understand the net present value of these contracts. While um, investing based on information that all of my competitors seem to be ignoring.
Yeah, yeah, wild. But recently in the news, obviously, we're talking about this executive order that's kind of being leaked out there. Somehow people are talking about it. And, there's some rumors that like it's going to quadruple the capacity or the need for uranium supply in the US, right? And right now, the US produces less than 1 million pounds. And right now, the demand's around 50. And if they want to quadruple it, it goes to 200 million. Like, where is this going to come from? Unless they fast track some of these projects in the States. And we've seen that in the news. Anfield's project because looks like it's going to be fast tracked. Think I saw something out of South Dakota today or South Carolina. My apologies. That's going to be up and back and running. And yeah, it's going to be really super interesting here on that. Are you a believer in like that $150 pound uranium story?
No,
No.
but I don't need it.
Yeah, perfect.
Uh,
I love that answer.
you know, I mean, could it happen? Listen, I remember the first time. Well, no, that's not true. The second time I got involved in uranium was 1998.
Hmm.
And I sort of looked at the structure of the uranium market and said, the stuff has to go to $40. If it
Yeah.
doesn't go to $40, the lights go out. I was wrong. It went to what? 105 as opposed to 40.
Yeah. Yeah.
The lesson is that when markets revert, they don't revert to mean. They overshoot mean. That's the way it works. So if you say to me, could the uranium price go to 150 or 200? Arlen, if you give me the use of the word could, I can sell you anything. I don't need that.
Yeah.
Uh, I need an incentive price that is year 2020, $60 a pound with inflation escalators. So maybe I need $75 today. That's what I need. And establishing a $75 term contract for US sourced uranium to US utilities is a no-brainer. You and I could do it if we had the material. This isn't really sophisticated financial engineering. We can go to some of the highest quality investment grade issuers on the planet, Southern Company, Duke Power,
Yeah.
and we can enter into long-term contracts at $75 to $80 with appropriate inflation adjusters right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what Trump could do, and it appears that he wants to do it, my friend Scott Melby tells me he does, is at least get out of the way.
Hmm.
Don't oppose the process. I understand that Mr. Trump is highly transactional and he wants to reward his friends, he wants to punish his enemies. He's making too many promises to too many people.
Hmm.
So I assume that he's like every other politician on the planet and that they're all lies.
Without a question.
At least they're all good intentions. If he gets out of the way, if he eliminates the insane regulatory roadblocks, then you have to understand that regulation in the United States is tripartite. You have to deal with federal, state, and local. You ran into a roadblock with the feds for years. They wouldn't turn down a proposal, they just wouldn't consider it. So you'd put a proposal into an echo chamber and you could wait 10 years. They have a sunset clause, which says if they don't respond within X number of months, that it's considered to be valid, and they would send back a little thing to you saying, if you don't give us an extension, we'll say no for no reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So eliminating that means that then the investor needs to go state by state. What states are likely to approve uranium projects?
Hmm.
Right now, the A states, the absolute A states, are Texas and Wyoming.
Yeah.
Other states you have problems with, potentially, and other locales you have problems with. You have problems on Navajo land right now.
100%.
I think that goes away, by the way.
Okay.
I have connections in Navajo land, and the younger generation of Navajo has a very different orientation to my generation.
Yep.
And with all due respect, my generation is dying. We're getting out of the way. Uh,
We're all dying, Rick, eventually.
well, some of us are dying faster than others are. At any rate, that was a long-winded answer to saying all I'm asking the president to do is get out of the way. That's
Get out
all.
of the way. Yeah, yeah, fair enough. So state by state here. So like maybe Utah is maybe in that state now as an A-class state because of what they just what they're saying. It looks like they're going to fast track that mine, which could be really interesting.
I would consider Utah to be a B state currently.
Okay.
There isn't enough uranium infrastructure in the state.
Okay.
In Texas, South Texas has seen the economic benefit of uranium. Wyoming has seen the economic benefit of uranium. Utah is a work in progress, but given what's happening at the state level around other what I would consider to be sensible fiscal initiatives, I'm positively inclined to Utah.
I want to talk about actually the generations now that are starting to embrace this clean energy because like I'm starting to see that shift too, right? like I'm almost 50, and I remember those days of Fukushima and all that, right? And I got crushed on some investments. And we are seeing this younger generation starting to grasp this clean energy. Like they're starting to get it. They're starting to get that, like a single pound of uranium is, multiples and multiples and multiples the amount of clean energy that oil can bring, or solar power or wind power. And I think that's something that we need to see to have that support to see this kind of grow. And we're certainly seeing it on X, right? Like we talked about. I find that the X uranium community is very rabid. They're very, very alive, and it is a lot more the younger generation, right? But then with that becomes inexperience, right? Of the fear and greed of capitulation. Oh my God, get me out, because they're still not convicted yet that they're right. Um, I'm convinced we're right here, and I'm convinced right now that uranium is something to be looking at while it was being hated, and everyone else is talking about gold stocks again.
It's
Um,
important, I think, that young people right-size their portfolio. What happens to
oh,
a lot of people
yes,
is that they
yes,
buy a narrative, but then they buy a narrative with such a large proportion of their net worth that they can't stay the trade, that
yeah,
volatility scares them out of it.
yeah,
I know a lot about uranium. I've been in the racket for a very long time. I have a lot of friends in the uranium space, uh, and I still right size it in my portfolio.
yeah. Good for
When
you.
when the uranium stocks have a 5% down day, I often don't even know that they did.
You don't lose sleep.
I, I don't even see it. Uh, if you have, like I do, a 5-year orientation, what happens in any particular 24-hour period, it, it, it not only is it of no concern, it doesn't register.
Yeah,
If something goes fundamentally wrong in the uranium space, if we had a replay of Fukushima,
yeah.
that I notice. That changes the thesis. That changes my sense of what the market will be like 5 years from now. But it is entirely likely, as small as the uranium space is, that one West German investment fund getting redemptions and having to sell microcap uranium stocks could take the whole market down 5 to 7%, or up 5 to 7%. And well, I guess that's interesting to a technical analyst. It has absolutely no import as to the investment thesis.
Or true bearing. Yeah, 100, like totally agree. Yeah, totally agree with you. Okay. So when you're looking at some of these uranium stocks, are you looking at like the producers, the spots, or are you like, or just kind of picking your spots on certain companies and saying, I like this because of this, and I'm long.
No, I'm very applied.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I don't make applied mistakes, Arlen, but I'm very applied. I'm into my fourth bull market now in resources,
Hmm.
the fourth of my life. And resource markets follow very predictable patterns. They're capital intensive and they're cyclical. What happens is that resource bull markets are always led by the commodity. And so you will see a recovery in the uranium price first, which I suspect, well, I suspect it's 4 years old, really. The
Hmm.
recovery from $20 a pound to 70 or whatever it's trading for now. When that happens, when the price of the commodity moves, if it moves faster than the costs of inputs, the cost of production, including importantly, by the way, cost of capital and social rents, not just AISC, and the margins begin to move, two things happens. The price momentum of the material attracts generalist interest in the space. And as the margins improve for the producers, the best of the best uranium stocks, which right now is populated by one name, Cameco,
Hmm.
move first.
Yep.
When that price momentum attracts more investors, one of two things happens. There's either a valuation arbitrage, where people look downstream from Cameco and say this company is relatively cheap compared to Cameco, or over time, Cameco takes them over because they have a lower cost of capital,
Yep.
and the mid-tier moves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once that happens, and there's a valuation discrepancy between the mid-tiers and on a risk-adjusted basis, the explorers and developers, either that same valuation arbitrage repeats itself, or the bigger companies take over the smaller companies. And this M&A cycle is becoming more aggravated because the larger a company is, the more trading liquidity it enjoys, particularly if it's New York Stock Exchange traded, the more passive and index buying it gets. As a whole bunch of people say, I really like the uranium theme, and I really don't want to spend 10 or 12 hours a month studying uranium. Increasingly, they're attracted to putting in money like a vehicle, like the Sprott like the Sprott uranium ETF. And that ETF, although it's factors based, is oriented towards larger and more liquid companies. So there's a mechanism there for a value arbitrage. As companies gain size and gain liquidity, they gain passive buying, which means they gain market cap, and they have a lower cost of capital than their smaller peers. So either the valuation arbitrage works itself out through passive buying, or else the bigger guys take over the little guys. It's simple stuff.
Yeah. Um, so let's get back to quickly. We're not going to beat the horse on uranium. I think we've said enough. And but I want to talk about Vancouver again being like the source of information. And if we also look at the Vancouver board, the TSX Venture Board, it's also showing some very compelling like charts right now. And that's going to be making up of all sorts of mining companies and junior explorers, blah, blah, blah. Any other metals right now that you think are kind of hated that you're kind of licking your chops at, saying thank you very much?
I like nickel
Yeah, interesting.
because it's hated,
Yeah.
particularly sulfide nickel. I love PGMs, although it's very tough to express one's preference in the market.
Hmm.
Uh, Arlen, more than commodities, I like deposits. What I like is, especially in a junior wrapper, in a sub 100 million market cap wrapper, I love a tier one deposit, a deposit over $10 billion in situ recoverable reserves and resources, where the deposit, you believe, hopefully supported by a PEA at least, would be in the lowest cost quartile on the planet and the highest return on capital employed in the planet.
Makes sense.
That usually occurs in deposits that are out of favor.
Right.
So right now, there's one that is a graphite rutile company. There's a different one that's a rare earths company. There is a different one that's a nickel deposit. In each
Yeah.
case, these are companies with, in their cases, over $20 billion in recoverable in situ reserves and resources in commodity types that nobody cares about, in countries that people hate. And I have found that if the country thesis works out okay, and I'm willing to own these things for 5 years until they have progressed the deposits to the point where they are in other people's minds de-risked, that's where I get my 10 baggers or my 20 baggers or my 30 baggers.
Yeah.
It may take 5 or 6 years,
Yeah.
but
Who
amazingly,
cares? Who cares?
yeah, amazingly, at 72 years of age, I've had 10 5-year periods as an investor.
Yeah.
It doesn't give me
Right.
much trauma anymore. If you put, $100,000 up and you take $2 million out, the fact that you had to wait 5 years,
Who cares?
yeah.
Like, yeah, like time is just yeah, I could go on about time, but totally agree with you. What I find interesting about the comment is like it feels to me that like stocks are like the only commodity, the cheaper they get, the more people want to sell. Like you go tell someone that your tires are 90% off for your car and people line up around the block, right? You go tell them that an asset's on a fire sale 90% than where it used to be trading at. And people are like, no, I don't want to touch that. And I think that that's when we got to be looking at things and going, okay, let's take a really hard deep dive at this and just go against like the mass psychology of fear, right? Like Fear and Greed, one of my favorite books out there, by Jim Dines, right? Like that was one of my first books I read in the market, and it's really helped me understand that psychology, right? So okay, so talking about other commodities, and giving people access to management teams that they feel they don't have access to. You've got a show coming up here in July, that you bring the management teams of your shareholdings to, right? To allow investors to actually get access to these people so they can get to know the DNA of the company, they can understand the management team, they can understand the deposit better. Can you give a little quick rundown on that show, what the dates are coming up on that?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. The name of the conference is the Rule Natural Resources Investment Symposium. I'm reliably informed, although I can't remember that far back, that it's been going on for 30 years.
Okay.
In fact, it used to be in Vancouver for many years,
Yeah, yeah, I remember
until COVID and the ArriveCan app conspired us to depart Vancouver. Um, the conference takes place July 7 through 11 in Boca Raton, Florida, but it's also live streamed. Last year, we had 1,000 viewers around the world in 33 countries that viewed the conference from the comfort and convenience of their own home.
that.
However you choose to attend, live or live stream, the entire proceeding, including all of the breakout sessions, are recorded so that you can have access to the conference for a year. And Arlen, you're going to need it because we're giving you over 50 hours of programming in 4 days.
Oh,
And there's no
wow.
way anybody on earth, myself included, can absorb 50 hours of information in 4 days.
Come on. Come on, Rick.
Last year, as the producer of the conference, I had to play the tapes twice,
Yeah.
which will tell you
Wow.
something.
Yeah.
So I honestly believe that this is, in a walk, the finest natural resource conference on the planet. Here's why. First, we have great global macro, not the kind that you'd hear on CBC or CNBC, but rather comments delivered by people who have lived and participated in the events they describe. In a biblical sense, commentators from the belly of the beast. This year, we're going to have David Stockman, who wrote the book, The Triumph of Politics, about the derailment of the last attempt to reduce the size of the US government, and how both sides of the aisle conspired to derail the Reagan Revolution within 6 months of inauguration. David has written a more recent book called How to Cut $2 Trillion from the US budget. The point is that this guy's not a failed journalist, okay?
Hmm.
Not a $90,000 a year grad from Columbia. Speaks from the belly of the beast, right? He ran the Office of Management and Budget. We have Daniela DiMartino Booth talking about the Fed, not as a
Yeah.
failed journalist, but rather as a former Fed researcher.
Yeah.
We have Nomi Prinz talking about the nature of Wall Street as a former Goldman Sachs partner. We have Jim Rickards talking about the intersection of Wall Street and government as the former general counsel for long-term capital management, whose failure almost brought down Wall Street. We, we have Grant Williams talking about institutional bias, not as some pinko journalist, but rather as a former bank trader, first in Europe and then in Asia, all from the belly of the beast.
From
This
experience, like deep
all
experience.
all
Right.
players. From
Yeah.
there, we move on to portfolio managers and analysts who have been active in resource markets for a long time, not influencers whose analytical capabilities involved flunking out in uh, crypto or flunking out in pot stocks or flunking out in tech stocks, reinventing themselves in resources, but rather guys like John Hathaway, who began his career as a gold stock manager in the 70s,
Yeah.
Adrian Day, who's been around since the
Uh,
70s.
he's awesome. He's awesome.
We actually, this year, are going to have an investing legends panel where people who have been managing billions of dollars for decades talk about their successes, talk about their failures, and how they became better investors and how you can become better investors. In addition to that, even more importantly, we have had for 20 years something called the Living Legends panel, where we have the Robert Friedlands, the Bob Quartermains, the Ross Beatties of the world, and people who have built multi-billion-dollar resource companies from scratch, talking about how they did it, talking about what they're invested in today, and telling you how to identify the $10 million company or $25 million company that's going to become a $5 billion company. It's always been the highlight of the conference for the attendees. Then, which you alluded to, the qualification to be an exhibitor at my conference is different than all the other conferences. At every other conference, the exhibitors are considered to be advertisers. And the qualification to be an exhibitor is a check that cashes.
100%.
That's it. At
Yep.
my conference, you have to be owned in accounts owned and or managed by me. We turn down more exhibitors every year than we accept. Unfortunately, there's no guarantee that I own a stock. It's going to go up. But there is a guarantee that unlike any other conference on the planet, every one of these exhibitors has been vetted.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
allows me to do something wild. For 30 years, every investment education product I've ever sold has come with a full money back guarantee. If you attend either live or via live stream the Rule Investment Symposium, July 7th through 11 in Boca Raton. See, I'm making it easy for you. I'm doing everything but picking up the phone.
Well, you're
And
saving me some time. So awesome. Thank you.
don't think you got your money's worth. I'll give you your money back. The financial risk is all mine. There is no other conference presenter that I know of on the planet that has an unconditional money back guarantee. This is a riskless financial transaction. You won't get back the 50 hours of your life that you spent, but unlike any other investment conference in the world, if for any reason you don't think I gave you your money's worth, I'll give you your money back.
And I'll just bring you back right to what you said again at the beginning, right? Like we have access. You're giving people access to these people that you say we need access to become a billionaire, right? So
Arlen, what you say is
take
funny.
it.
I got an email from a guy about 8 years ago, and he said, Rick, I just have to tell you, following first Robert Friedland and then Ross Beatty around your exhibit floor, seeing what booths they stopped in front of, and occasionally eavesdropping on the questions they asked, was worth well more than the cost of admission. I got the whole rest of the conference for free.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Well, I want to say that my conference is the best in the world, but I don't have those types of names. So there you go. You take first prize.
No,
Um,
there's room for a lot of conferences.
yeah,
Ours is a conference that has traditionally been very suited to high net worth retail investors and family offices. That's been our franchise ever since I partnered that conference with Agora Publishing 30 years ago, and it's our focus now.
yeah, yeah. I'll certainly be there. That's a conference I don't think I can miss. And if you are listening in your audience, we'll provide all the links for you to go sign up and register via online or come see Rick. And if you want to see me, come see me too down there. Who cares? Now, so can you maybe give an example of some of the companies that are presenting there that you want to throw some names out and maybe in just various sectors?
Well, it really covers the gamut from Wheaton Precious and Agnico Eagle, the best of the biggies, uh,
Wow. Okay.
through the sort of Equinoxes, G Minings, Osisko royalties, all the way down to the prospect generator explorers and the junior uranium developers. Uh, we have long since sold out the exhibit floor.
Yeah.
Um, long since. And as I say, every year we accept between 55 and 60 exhibitors, and every year we get about 200 applicants.
Yeah. Good for you. That's awesome.
So wonderful place to be.
Yeah, well, if you're a junior company, of course you want to be there. Like, of course you want to be there, but you got to have Rick as a shareholder if you want the invite, guys.
Well, we do something else that nobody else that I know of does. Um, because we have such a short amount of time at the conference, and because we have so much information, I interview every single exhibitor before the conference, and we post those interviews at the Rule Classroom and on YouTube. So if you go to the Rule Investment Media site at YouTube, or you go to the Rule Classroom, either one, you can see 15-minute long interviews with every single exhibitor and most of the speakers. The idea being that you show up at the conference with a better sense of who you want to talk to and why.
Hmm. Yeah.
And the other thing that we do is for a year after the conference, we host discussion groups about the conference in the Rule Classroom so that you
Interesting.
can compare the notes that you took with the notes that 1,000 other people took. And you can follow and discuss the exhibitor's every press release for a year. And that sense of community, Arlen, is extremely important to me. This year we'll
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
between live and live stream, we'll have well over 2,000 people. The idea
Yeah.
that all of the knowledge in that group flows from the dais out to the assembly is stupid. There's an
It,
awful lot of contained knowledge in the community. And we've worked very hard for 30 years to develop an after conference community so that people can compare and contrast the study that they've done themselves on the topics and the attendees at the conference. In other words, the conference actually takes place for a year. The
yeah.
focal
Yeah.
point is the 4 days of its physical occurrence.
Yeah, what I like about that too, and I didn't know you get access to that. That's super cool. Is your audience participants are high net worth individuals, analysts, people that have been very successful. So if you are looking to gain that type of knowledge, these are the type of people you can tap into. I think that's pretty incredible. I know you can't take favorites there, but any of the names that you would love people to know that are coming to your show in particular?
No, I can't. I actually can't. I would ask people to go to the real classroom or to
Okay.
go on YouTube. We have about 20 interviews posted so far. We have 40 to
Okay.
go.
Okay.
It really depends on what somebody wants to be. Yeah, there are a lot of investors who can't afford the volatility, either psychologically or financially, and can't afford the risk to be in the small guys. And
Hmm.
so they will naturally gravitate to the Franco Nevadas and the Wheatons and the Agnico Eagles. There are others who want more torque.
Hmm.
Some of them may be attracted to out of favor stuff like nickel or platinum or rare earths. So they'll be attracted to those names. Others might be more attracted to precious metals, which would seem to be more topical now. Uh, a theme of the conference, really, for years, has been that the structure of the uranium business is more attractive than most people know. So uranium is probably a larger component of the conference than it is of other conferences, simply because uranium has been so attractive to me that my own portfolio is overrepresented with uranium.
Yep. That's okay with me. That's okay with me. Awesome. Well, Rick, that's great insight. Really appreciate your time today. I made a call on the uranium bottom just like a couple weeks ago, and then I saw Lobo as well, and you're out there banging the table, so I don't feel like I'm totally that lonely anymore, which is cool.
Hopefully,
Uh,
we'll be lonely one more time before it really rips. It would be
yeah.
nice to top up just one more time. Arlen, if I might say one other thing, for those members of your audience, and your audience has been very responsive over time, who want to know more about how I think about natural resources, we can personalize it. Anybody who wants can go to my website, Rule Investment Media, list your natural resource stocks, and I personally will rank them 1 to 10, one being best, 10 being worst. You got to be a little patient because I'm about 200 behind.
Okay.
And by the way, I comment on individual issues where I think my comments might have value. Like all of my other products, this one is a money back guarantee. Of course, since it's free, that's a fairly low risk offer. But if anybody wants to know what I think about their natural resource portfolio, simply go to Rule Investment Media. Understand you can't list by symbols because some stocks are listed in more than one country. You have to list the name of the company. But if you go to Rule Investment Media, list the names of your natural resource stocks. I will personally rank them 1 to 10, one being best, 10 being worst, and I will comment on individual issues if I think my comments have any specific value to that issue.
That's amazing. Thank you for that because I'll
Pleasure.
use it. And yeah, I strongly I'm not allowed to advise anybody here. I highly suggest you take advantage of this, people, if you're listening, because Rick has got a very, very good track record. So that's my little pump for you there. Tell me about Battle Bank very, very quickly.
Sure. I'm celebrating retirement by starting a bank, which is not something that I would recommend to other
Good
old folks.
idea.
Yeah, this is the seventh bank that I've been deeply involved in. Banking is a business that I know and love going way, way, way back. You understand Battle Bank probably in the context of our last bank, which was EverBank, which we started in 1999. We grew that bank from zero to $28 billion before selling the bank. We sold it to some good people, TIAA, but their audience was retired teachers.
Oh, great.
And the products which were of interest to their customers and the products that were of interest to our customers were somewhat different. So our customers got abandoned.
Hmm.
And so we're starting a bank to service our customers. How are our customers different? Well, self-actualized, aspiring people. Uh, People who do their own research and take their own action. Specifically, when I go to my big box bank in the US, they have 16 or 17 savings products, six of which don't pay me any interest. And I have no interest in not getting paid interest. At Battle Bank, we'll have one US dollar money market product. It pays you interest. It pays you interest on your checking balance. It does what you want, but we give you choice too. Let's say you're a first generation businessman. You have a business in Canada and a business in the United States. We will allow you to buy a CD in the United States in Canadian dollars. By the way, had you had a Canadian dollar CD with Rick Rule when Trudeau froze everybody's money over the truckers thing, if Mr. Trudeau would have come to Rick Rule without a court order, which he didn't have, and tried to freeze your money, I would have shown him the international high sign of unfriendliness on your behalf.
Would you have told him to pound sand?
Something like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Suffice it to say, you could save at Battle Bank in 20 different currencies, not the US, not just the US dollar.
Yeah.
Further, if you have a retirement account, at Battle Bank, your retirement account is your retirement account. At most places, it's a receptacle to put annuities and mutual funds. But with what we call a check bank RIA, your retirement account can own a duplex or a triplex or a franchise
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
that you manage. Uh, Truly superb. Another thing that
Yeah.
we do that nobody else does in the United States that I know of is we will establish what's in effect a margin account for physical gold and silver. If you have $100,000 worth of bullion, by the way, not buried in your backyard, but rather on deposit, we will allow you to access credit against that to buy a down
Oh,
payment, put down a down payment on a triplex, to buy more gold or silver for whatever purpose you want. You can access the capital that you have tied up in your bullion without having to sell the bullion and pay the capital gains tax.
so if I put my money with you, that's still my money.
It's your
Basically,
money.
it's
Your
basically,
money.
yeah. Rick, I grew up under since the day I was born, being taught to trust religion, trust the government, and who else was I supposed to trust? Religion, government, and the banks. And I just, 49 years later, I just look back and go, how has that turned out?
With regards to the banks, it's wise to read the fine print.
Well, I'll
With
be the
regards
last one to get paid when the banks go tits up, right? Like even my safety deposit, like the doors will be locked. The government will get their money first, and everyone else will get paid before I do, right? So,
every bank, Canadian or US, is required to distribute something called a statement of financial condition, but people never ask for it.
yeah,
I
yeah,
always do.
yeah, yeah.
It's good if you do business with a bank that has some money, that has some equity. It's good if you do business with a bank that doesn't have a portfolio full of 8 or 10 year fixed price loans that they're funding in overnight floating rate deposits. That brought down something called the US savings and loan industry. It brought down Silicon Valley Bank. The banking business is a very, very, very good business if you mind your P's and Q's and don't get fancy. That's what Battle Bank is all about. It's about a customer centric bank that does a few things really, really well. and doesn't do anything stupid.
Yeah, like maybe pushing credit cards on people that can't afford credit cards and can't afford interest, right? Things
You
like
know,
that too.
at Everbank, if my memory serves me well, when we had $28 billion in deposits, our credit card portfolio was about $45 million. We offered credit cards as a convenience.
Hmm.
Most of our customers didn't need revolving credit for consumer purposes at 24%.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
those who did, we sort of preferred if they were other people's customers. Just as
100%.
we didn't want to run a dumb bank, to be honest with you, we didn't want dumb customers.
It's a high risk, that's a high risk customer, right? Like makes sense for business.
And you're not doing the right thing, frankly.
Yeah.
Assisting somebody to take a trip on a Carnival cruise with money that they don't have, that they're paying off at 24%, is not a good thing to do. I just
Well, I do recall Trudeau at one point encouraging people to take more money out on their credit cards, to spend more money on their homes to increase the GDP in Canada. Like, yeah,
that's why he legalized it.
unreal, unreal. Right on. I've had 48 minutes of your time, and that's 20 more minutes than I asked for. So thank you so much, Rick.
Thank
Always a
you for the
pleasure to talk with
opportunity.
you. Yeah, I'll see you down in Florida for sure. And I'll say hi to you next time I see you kicking around one of the shows. Always appreciate your insight. It's super valuable for our audience. And once again, we'll put all the information about your shows at the bottom of our show. Like or share this, whatever you want to do. And we will talk to you again next time, Rick. Thanks so much.
Fine. Make sure that you contact us about the ability to broadcast from our floor. We have a special place set aside for folks like you
Okay, cool.
to amplify the message of the conference. So we look forward to hosting you down there.
Yeah, right on. Thanks so much, Rick.
Great. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Be sure to follow Rick on social media for expert investment insights and access to his latest interview. You can also sign up to attend the upcoming Rule Symposium taking place July 7th to 11th in Boca Raton, Florida. For more information to sign up, be sure to check the link in our bio. Like and share this interview. If you're a uranium bull, let's get out there. Hopefully you're a long-term bull and really believe the fundamentals and what we see kind of happening right now, right in front of us. If you aren't already, be sure to join the Kinvestor Network by subscribing to our channel. Follow us on social media. If you like what we talk about, like that video and comment. And we're also going to be putting out dates for our investment conference, online investment conference. That'll be kind of happening here in fall sometime. So stay tuned and happy investing. Take care.